Thinking of moving to Calgary's inner city? In this video, I'll take you on a tour of all of the neighborhoods in the inner city, and I'll let you know what makes them unique and the pros and cons. Let's get into it. All right, I've got the Calgary Real Estate Board's community map pulled up, and you can see the inner city is the purple area on this map. And I'm just going to go through this and give you one or two lines per neighborhood to keep the video short. And I'll just summarize what I think about each of these neighborhoods. And I'll start off here with the Greenview area. So first up, the Greenview Industrial Park is not a residential neighborhood, so I'm going to skip over this one. Greenview is definitely a neighborhood, and there's two parts of it. The first part over here, you'll see a lot of entry-level condos and townhouses. And the other part of it, the south part, you'll see a lot of like the older bungalows. A very affordable part of Calgary, especially being so close to the downtown. Great for first-time home buyers or investors. Not super high-end, but a good spot for like a first-time home buyer. Highland Park is the next neighborhood right over here. Now this area, you'll find a combination of older properties and a lot of revitalization. There's tons of infill development happening in Highland Park. And I think it can be a good neighborhood. It's not as expensive as some of these areas over here, but not too far off. And it could be a good spot for someone that works in the Northeast, that maybe around the airport, but doesn't want to live in the Northeast. It's not that far to just jump onto 32nd or McKnight and get into this part of Calgary from the Northeast. Next up is Highwood, this neighborhood right over here. Now there's not much going on with Highwood. It's just a very family-friendly neighborhood, lots of mature trees, some good schools. But nothing too much to talk about here. There's not much for redevelopment, just a lot of older properties that are not too far from the downtown. Queens Park Village, I believe this is just a cemetery, not a residential neighborhood, so I'm not going to cover this. Cambrian Heights, not all that different from Highwood, but I would say it's a bit more hilly, and there are parts of it with excellent views of the inner city. And you've also got easy access to Nose Hill Park, which is this giant park that you see right over here. And there's also Confederation Park, which runs kind of like this throughout this area. So lots of park access for all of these neighborhoods that you see in here. Rosemont, this neighborhood right here, I would say Rosemont, you do see some higher end properties in here, maybe compared to Highwood and stuff like that. Some of these homes are backing directly onto Confederation Park, so it's great for nature lovers, and I think it's a very peaceful, very scenic neighborhood. I'm going to skip over here to Winston Heights Mount View, this chunk right over here. Now it looks like a giant neighborhood, but it's actually not that big because most of this is kind of like park space. So the Deerfoot Trail runs like this. This is the biggest highway in Calgary, the busiest highway in Calgary. And there are parts of Winston Heights that are overlooking this valley where you can see the highway. So there are some views in Winston Heights. And the neighborhood itself, you'll see a lot of older homes and a lot of development, a lot of duplexes being put up. Not that different from Highland Park, this neighborhood you talked about. Next up is Tuxedo Park. Not all that different from Winston Heights. I would say the difference between the two is that Tuxedo Park, you've got maybe a bit better access to some shopping, the stores, restaurants, and bars and stuff like that. You'll see a lot of shopping along Edmonton Trail, 4th Street, Center Street. So Tuxedo Park is right in the middle of that. So it might be a bit better access, but the neighborhood itself is very similar to Winston Heights. Mount Pleasant, also very similar to Tuxedo Park and Winston Heights. I would say, in my opinion, I would prefer Mount Pleasant over these two, just because there's more access to Confederation Park. So you'll see some very luxury type properties that are on the hills or backing onto the park here. So quite nice. And Capitol Hill, this neighborhood over here, not all that different from Mount Pleasant. There are parts of it that can be quite affordable as well. If you are looking for to get into a property like downtown, not downtown, but like close to the inner city, but somewhat affordable, I would put Capitol Hill on your list. It's a very good location. You've got Crowchild Trail over here, the Trans-Canada Highway over here, downtown is over here. I used to live in Capitol Hill. It's great for a realtor as well because I was driving around all throughout the city, and it was a good central location. So I quite like Capitol Hill. I think it's a very convenient spot. Banff Trail, not all that different from Capitol Hill, but I would say it offers a bit better access to the University of Calgary. So it could be a spot for like an investor to buy a property and then rent it out. You'll always have clientele looking to rent in Banff Trail. It's also good to buy like an older bungalow and fix it up. Could be good for renovation projects. You don't see as many infill developments in Banff Trail as you do like Capitol Hill or Mount Pleasant. I think it's a great neighborhood. You also have Crowchild Trail right here, all sorts of shopping along like the Brentwood area, Dalhousie and stuff like that, the Crowfoot Crossing way up here. It's once you're on Crowchild Trail, you can easily get to these areas in like 5-10 minutes. And there's also a C-train line in Banff Trail which will take you downtown. So it's a very convenient location. And next up in the cover these areas over here. And first up is Bridgeland. This is a very popular neighborhood, and you'll find a combination of brand new condo developments, older single family properties. You'll even find some duplexes and stuff like that. Excellent shopping. I think it's on First Avenue. Walking distance to the downtown core. The Calgary Zoo is around here. There's some excellent dog parks on the hills up here. This is one of the more popular developments around the inner city. Next up is Renfrew. Now this is a giant hill that runs kind of like over here to Crescent Heights to Sunnyside. All the way from here to here basically is a giant hill. And so Renfrew is on top of the hill, and some of the properties here have great views of the downtown. I think it's a very quiet neighborhood, some good schools, above average in terms of real estate pricing, very convenient location. Now, I don't find as many infill developments in Renfrew as there are like in Tuxedo Park and Mount Pleasant. More of like a single family neighborhood, but there are pockets close to the main highways here, not highways, but main roads that do have some condo developments. But for the most part, I would say Renfrew is more of like a single family, quieter neighborhood. Crescent Heights is a bit of a mixed bag. You'll see everything. You'll see a lot of condo developments. You'll see duplexes. You'll see fourplexes. You'll see luxury single-family homes. Some of the most expensive properties in Calgary can be found in Crescent Heights along Crescent Road. Again, this is a ridge right here overlooking downtown, and some of the best views of the city are located in this part of Calgary. So you'll find some really old properties, entry level, next to like some really fancy homes. So it is a bit of a mixed bag, but very scenic, mature trees, excellent location. Rosedale, not that different from Crescent Heights, but I would say it's a bit more higher end on average. It seems like every property here is single family, and they're all luxury on big lots. Very good access to the SAIT, Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, and excellent views as well. Rosedale, definitely a very high-end luxury neighborhood. Below the hill, you have Sunnyside, this neighborhood over here. Sunnyside is part of the Kensington area, so very popular. So around Memorial and 10th Street, you'll see a lot of bars, restaurants, shopping, and Sunnyside is walking distance to all of that. So a very trendy location. I don't find as many infill developments happening in Sunnyside. My theory is because most of the lots in Sunnyside are fairly narrow. They're not well suited for like the duplexes and stuff like that. But definitely a very historic, and I think it's scenic as well. And it's just a very, very convenient location. It's directly across the street from the river, and the downtown is right over here. So just a prime location. Next up is Hillhurst. Now this is commonly referred to as Kensington. So people lump in West Hillhurst, and Sunnyside as Kensington. A very trendy part of Calgary. A lot of the bars, restaurants, the dining scene is around here. Hillhurst itself, you'll find a combination of some new condo developments, some older ones. You'll see some older properties and some luxury brand new homes as well. Some good parks around here. Again, excellent location. You can walk right to downtown from just across the bridge, so it's quite easy to get around. There's also a C-train stop. There's some grocery stores. So there's basically everything in Hillhurst, and a lot of good schooling options as well. West Hillhurst is kind of similar to Hillhurst, but maybe a bit more residential, a bit quieter. And I'd say, from my opinion, I think the homes are a bit more, they're a bit more expensive too in West Hillhurst compared to the Hillhurst area. But very similar. Again, good schools. You can walk around here. You get the river right here as well. So it's just a very good location, prime access to everything. On top of the hill, you've got Hounsfield Heights. I've always just called it Briar Hill. Is not all that different from Rosedale or Crescent Heights. You'll see some luxury properties on top of the hill with excellent views of the downtown, more of a higher end neighborhood. Same thing with St. Andrews Heights, this neighborhood right over here. You've got Toronto Crescent, I believe is in St. Andrews Heights, one of the more famous streets in Calgary with excellent panoramic views of the downtown and the valley. And St. Andrews Heights is also walking distance to the Foothills Hospital. So I imagine a lot of like doctors are living in this neighborhood as it's high end and it's close to the hospital. Parkdale is below the hill and very nice neighborhood, a place I used to live in when I finished university. And you'll see a bit of everything in Parkdale. You'll find some duplexes, some luxury properties, easy access to the river. Crowchild Trail is right here, so easy to get around. I've walked from Parkdale all the way to downtown, so it is walking distance. And a very beautiful neighborhood, lots of mature trees, and walking distance to the Foothills Hospital as well. Point McKay is this neighborhood over here. A bit of an outlier. This neighborhood is all condos and townhouses that are kind of tucked into the river. So it's a bit built up, which I think is kind of odd considering nothing else around here is like that. But if you are looking for like a condo or a townhouse, it's a pretty cool neighborhood. I would say it feels more northwest than it does inner city to me, but that's just my opinion. A good spot, you can easily jump onto Shaganappy Trail and get to Market Mall, or the University of Calgary is just over here. Next up is the downtown portion. So the downtown core is right here. Now the core is mostly like commercial high-rise buildings, a place where people go to work. There's the odd like residential condo in here, but most of them are kind of surrounding the downtown core. And I'll start here with the Beltline. This is kind of like the heartbeat of Calgary, like the Manhattan of Calgary. You'll see all of the condo developments here, shopping. You've got the 17th Avenue over here. It's a very built up part of the city. The downtown West End is kind of a continuation of the Beltline. It might not be as good as the Beltline in my opinion. There are some slummy parts of the West End. Same idea though, lots of condo developments, walking distance to the downtown. Eau Claire, this area right over here, is on the river. So the river is separating Sunnyside and Eau Claire. And Eau Claire is a bit more of a higher end neighborhood around the downtown. It's all condo developments and they're backing directly onto the river, so it's quite nice. Some great parks around here like Princess Island Park. Chinatown is an authentic Chinatown. You'll see a lot of Chinese restaurants and stores. Not a very big neighborhood, but definitely it's authentic. And not too much to say about Chinatown though. The downtown East Village. This used to be one of the worst parts of Calgary like 15, 20 years ago. And now it's quite a bit better. It's undergone heavy revitalization. Lots of new developments here. It's being built up. Lots of new condo developments. The C-train line stops around here. They're actually developing the old hockey arena area. So this whole part of Calgary is going to be built up, and it's quite nice, but you'll still find some vagrants walking around. It's still a bit rough around the edges, but I think it's got a lot of potential. Next up, we have Inglewood. This is the oldest neighborhood in Calgary. It formed where the Elbow River and the Bow Rivers meet, which is somewhere around here. This is why the city formed kind of where it is. And Inglewood is definitely a unique part of Calgary. You've got 9th Avenue, which has a lot of bars, restaurants, shopping, some trendy stores as well. A bit of a hipster type neighborhood, I would say. A lot of music venues and stuff like that. I quite like it. I think it's very unique. So good parks around here. You've got access to both the Elbow and the Bow Rivers, walking distance to downtown. There are parts of it that are very entry level, and there are parts of it that are also quite expensive as well. And there are parts of it that are actually kind of commercial too, industrial. So these areas right here, Alyth, Highfield, Burns, Manchester, are all industrial. And parts of Inglewood and Ramsay are backing onto these industrial areas. So these two together, Ramsay and Inglewood, have a kind of a unique vibe to them. And so Ramsay up next. There are some excellent views of the downtown core from Ramsay. There's Scotsman's Hill, where I've actually shot many of my YouTube videos from. So excellent views on the hill. And there are parts of Ramsay that are backing onto these industrial areas. So definitely a unique part of the city. Moving west, let's talk about Sun Alta. Is kind of a continuation of the Beltline. Maybe not as built up as the Beltline, but the same kind of idea. You'll find a lot of older condo developments next to brand new condo developments. And you'll also find some single family homes in here as well, in certain pockets of it. Next up is Scarborough Sun Alta West, a very tiny pocket of the city, not very big. And it's kind of a continuation of Scarborough, where you will find some higher end properties on hills overlooking the downtown. And there are parts of it that are backing onto the golf course up here, the Shaganappi course, which is right over here. Again, not very big. These two areas are not... I think I've been here once since 2012 when I got licensed to show property. They're not very big, and not many listings or sales in these areas. Next up is Shaganappi and Killarney. I'm going to lump them together because they're not all that different. Again, we have the golf course over here, and Shaganappi is not all that big, and it's quite similar to Killarney. Now, these two areas, they're kind of similar to like the Mount Pleasant, Tuxedo Park areas in that you'll find a lot of older bungalows being torn down to make room for infills. So you will find a lot of older properties next to duplexes, next to some brand new properties as well. Very popular part of the city. I find Killarney is more on the west side than it is in the inner city, in my opinion. And at the west side, this orange area is very popular. On average, some of the most expensive properties in the city. And Killarney definitely has that kind of vibe. But again, not all that far from the downtown. I just feel it has more of a west side vibe than it does an inner city vibe. Next up, I'm going to cover the Marda Loop area, which is this kind of chunk of the city. So Marda Loop is a trendy part of Calgary where you'll find a lot of bars, restaurants, shopping, cool shops around this part of the city. But people will generalize and just say this is Marda Loop, and they'll refer to this chunk of it. So I'm going to start off here with Bankview, this neighborhood right over here. Actually, I'll lump in Bankview and South Calgary, very similar neighborhoods. This part of Calgary is very hilly. It's kind of like San Francisco, and you'll find a lot of everything. You'll find older properties that have been torn down and made room, and new homes being built up. You'll find a lot of condo developments, both old and new. Duplexes. You'll find everything in this part of Calgary, but it's just a very hilly part of the city, and you've got easy access to Marda Loop and easy access to 17th Avenue and the downtown core. And we've got Richmond, this neighborhood right over here. Not all that different from parts of Bankview in South Calgary. It's a bit quieter, I would say, and you'll find a lot of luxury single-family homes and some pretty high-end duplexes in here as well. And it's just very close to the Marda Loop, the main kind of shop area. So just a prime location, easy access to Crowchild Trail as well, which is this highway right over here. And it's quite scenic as well. It's very hilly. Next up is Garrison Woods. Now, I find this to be a very unique neighborhood. It used to be a military base, and it has been transformed into a master plan community. So you'll find some character homes, some brownstone townhouses and stuff like that. It's just a very cool vibe, walking distance to the main area of Marda Loop as well. And the last part of the Marda Loop area is Altadore. Now, this is probably the most popular neighborhood of this chunk of the city. Prime location. You can find some properties near yourself for $2-3 million or more. Great access to Marda Loop, easy access to the Elbow River and the valley. Good dog parks around here. There are parts of it that are quite built up along the Marda Loop, the main area. You'll find some townhouses and condos, but for the most part, Altadore is a single-family neighborhood, luxury homes as well. Very nice neighborhood, very popular. And next up, I'm going to cover Lower Mount Royal, Cliff Bungalow, Mission, and Earlton. And I'm going to cover them together because they are kind of similar, or lump them together. And first up is Lower Mount Royal, not to be confused with Upper Mount Royal, which I'll get into. Lower Mount Royal is mostly condos in a prime location. You've got 17th Avenue right here. You can walk to the Beltline, walk to downtown. Very nice part of the city. And mostly just condos though. Cliff Bungalow is a bit different from Lower Mount Royal, where you're going to find some single family homes mixed together with older condos and new condo developments as well. And the single family homes near are fairly old, and they're on narrow lots. Like, they're not huge properties in here, but they are classified as single family homes. And you've also got 4th Street right here, which is a very popular road full of bars, restaurants, dining, and stuff like that. Mission is the next neighborhood over here. Mission, people kind of lump in Cliff Bungalow with Mission. They're very similar. Again, you've got 4th Street, all the bars, restaurants, shopping. Mission's got great access to the Elbow River, which kind of flows out like this. And you've got excellent access to Princess Island Park. There's a fancy gym around here. They keep changing the name of it every couple of years, so I forget what it's called. But I've lived in Mission for maybe a decade in the past, and it's one of the best parts of Calgary. Very central, easy to get around, walking distance to downtown. Basically, if you live in Mission, you don't have to leave for much because everything's kind of around here. And next up we have Earlton. I'd say half of Earlton is very similar to Mission. It's just across the river from it, where it's mostly condos. The second half is quite hilly, and you'll find a lot of older properties in here. Some are being torn down to make room for brand new luxury infills or luxury single-family homes. Quite hilly. And the last chunk of the city from Upper Mount Royal all the way to the Bel Air area is, I think, probably the highest end part of Calgary. Very expensive, very scenic. You have the Glenmore Reservoir over here. The Elbow River flows from the reservoir down to the inner city, and it connects to the Bow River up here. So you got a lot of properties that are backing onto the river. Very nice part of Calgary. So Upper Mount Royal, this is where you're going to find some mansions, some really high-end properties. You can find sales near that are higher than $5 million. This is like one of the most expensive parts of Calgary. Very beautiful. You've got all sorts of crazy-looking homes, nice landscaping, all unique properties on massive lots. And next up, you have Elbow Park, this neighborhood right over here. Quite similar to Mount Royal, very hilly, very expensive mansions. The main difference, I would say, is there are parts of Elbow Park that are backing onto the Elbow River. So you got that aspect of it, which is quite nice. Some of these homes are really high-end. Next up is Rideau Park and Roxborough. Same kind of idea as parts of Elbow Park, where there's luxury homes backing onto the Elbow River. Not very big neighborhoods, but they're awesome though. I think if I had the money, I'd buy a home in Roxborough. Easy access to Mission with all the shopping, dining, and stuff like that. But the neighborhood itself is all single-family homes, very quiet, very safe, and the homes are all beautiful. Next up is Park Hill, a bit different, where these areas were backing onto the river. Park Hill is above the river on a hill overlooking everything, so there are excellent views from Park Hill. There's a street here, I forget the name of the street, but it faces north, and you've got fantastic views of the downtown from Park Hill. So a very beautiful part of the city. It can be a bit confusing driving around in Park Hill unless you're familiar with it, but again, a very nice part of the city. The next two, Britannia and El Boya. I'll start with Britannia. Is kind of the same idea as Park Hill, where it's on top of the hill. Actually, I shouldn't say that. There are parts of Britannia that are going uphill, and there are parts that are on top of the hill. The areas that are on the hill have excellent views of the whole of Elbow River Valley. Some really high-end homes in Britannia, one of the more expensive parts of the city. Very beautiful. Same idea with El Boya, but there are parts of El Boya that are actually directly on the Elbow River, and very beautiful properties, very hilly. Both are very quiet neighborhoods with super high-end properties. Very beautiful area for sure. Windsor Park is, you're getting away from the Elbow River, and it's not quite as expensive as this part of the city. And it's a bit of a mixed bag. You'll find everything in Windsor Park: townhouses, condos, duplexes, luxury single-family homes. All in all, a very nice neighborhood, but I wouldn't say it's as pricey as this part of the city, but still very nice. Manchester, this is mainly an industrial neighborhood, but there are pockets of condo developments in here. But for the most part, this is like an industrial area. And next up is Bel Air. Now this is it's not a very big neighborhood, but it's definitely one of the more pricey neighborhoods in Calgary. You'll find some crazy homes in here that are ultra exclusive, very, very expensive on huge lots. You've got excellent access to the Calgary Golf and Country Club over here and the Glenmore Reservoir. Very nice homes in this tiny pocket of the city. And last up is Mayfair and Meadowlark Park. Not as expensive as Bel Air, a bit different. These areas you'll find mostly are like 1950s bungalows, big bungalows on big lots. Excellent access to Glenmore Trail, which is this highway right here. McLeod Trail is this main artery right here. And you have Chinook Centre is the biggest mall in Calgary. So they are in a great location. And they're just not as pricey as Bel Air. And if you're looking for a big bungalow on a big lot and you want to renovate something, this is a prime area to do that. Well, there you have it. That's my take on the inner city neighborhoods of Calgary. Just a good quick rundown. Now, if you are watching this and you could use some help, any questions whatsoever, if you go to ryangillard.ca and go to the About section, You can book a call with me. You can actually send me an email as well. If you go to Contact Us and you scroll down, it'll just ask for your name, email, phone number, and your message. I will get it myself and get back to you. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.